In July 1947, a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe arrived in India for the first time in his life. He had never been to the subcontinent before. He spoke none of its languages. He had no expertise in its history, its religions, or its politics. He had been given one job: draw the border that would divide British India into two independent nations, India and Pakistan. He had 5 weeks to do it. When he was finished, he left India and never returned. He rarely spoke publicly about what he had done. He burned his papers. He refused the fee he was offered. The line he drew, known as the Radcliffe Line, divided communities that had lived alongside each other for centuries. It separated farmers from their fields, families from their relatives, Sikhs from their holiest shrines. When it was announced, it triggered one of the largest forced migrations in human history. 14 million people crossing a border in both directions in a matter of weeks. Estimates range from around 200,000 to 1 million of them killed in the violence that followed, and Cyril Radcliffe did everything he could to leave it behind. To understand what happened in 1947, you have to understand what British India was and what partition meant for the people who lived there. British India in 1947 was home to roughly 400 million people. It was one of the most religiously and ethnically diverse territories on Earth. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Jains, Buddhists, and dozens of other communities, speaking hundreds of languages and dialects, living in varying degrees of integration and tension across the subcontinent. The British had governed this diversity through a combination of direct administration and manipulation of communal differences, a policy that historians have argued both reflected and deepened the divisions between Hindu and Muslim populations. The census categories the British introduced, the separate electorates they created for different religious communities, the political structures they built, all of these encouraged Indians to understand themselves primarily as members of religious communities, rather than as citizens of a single polity. By the 1940s, two major political movements were competing for the future of an independent India. The Indian National Congress, led by Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, sought a united, secular India in which all communities would have equal citizenship. The All India Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, argued that Muslims could not be safe in a Hindu-majority democracy and demanded a separate Muslim state, Pakistan. The British, exhausted by the Second World War and facing mounting pressure to leave India, chose the path of least resistance. Rather than forcing a resolution of the Hindu-Muslim political dispute, they decided to divide the country and let both sides have what they wanted. The decision to partition India was made with extraordinary speed and with inadequate attention to its consequences. In February 1947, the British government announced that it would transfer power to Indian hands by June 1948. In March, Lord Mountbatten arrived as the last Viceroy of India, charged with managing the transition. Within weeks of arriving, Mountbatten concluded that the political situation was deteriorating so rapidly, with communal violence already breaking out in several provinces, that the timeline needed to be accelerated dramatically. In June 1947, Mountbatten announced that power would be transferred not in June 1948, but on August 15, 1947, 10 weeks away. The decision was made to partition the country into two independent dominions. The boundaries of those dominions would have to be determined before the transfer of power. This is where Cyril Radcliffe entered the picture. Radcliffe was a distinguished London barrister, a lawyer, not a geographer, historian, or South Asia expert. He was chosen partly because of his legal precision and partly because he had no prior connection to India and could therefore be presented as impartial. He was appointed chairman of two boundary commissions, one for Punjab in the northwest and one for Bengal in the northeast, and told to produce his recommendations within 5 weeks. The areas he was asked to divide were among the most complex in the subcontinent. Punjab was home to Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs in overlapping distributions. There was no clean line that could separate Muslim majority areas from the rest without cutting through communities, cities, and canal systems that had been built and maintained as integrated units. Bengal was similarly complex, with Muslim majority areas in the east and Hindu majority areas in the west, but with the great city of Calcutta sitting at the junction, in a way that made any division deeply problematic. Radcliffe worked in conditions that made careful deliberation almost impossible. He arrived in early July and was expected to deliver his recommendations by August 9th. 5 weeks later, he had access to census data and maps, but the census data was a decade old and the maps were not always accurate. He consulted with members of his boundary commissions, who represented the competing interests of Congress and the Muslim League and who could rarely agree on anything. He conducted no field visits to the areas he was dividing. The heat was intense. The political pressure was overwhelming. Every decision about where the line would fall had immediate, enormous consequences for millions of people, determining whether their village would be in India or Pakistan, whether their religious community would be a majority or a minority, whether their farmland would be separated from the irrigation canals that watered it. In Punjab, the city of Lahore was awarded to Pakistan despite having a large Hindu and Sikh population. It was the most important city in the Muslim-majority province, and its loss was a devastating blow to the Sikh community in particular. Amritsar, home to the Golden Temple, the holiest site in Sikhism, was awarded to India, separated from Lahore by a border that cut through the heartland of Sikh culture. The Gurdaspur district, a small area in northern Punjab, was awarded to India in a decision that would have enormous long-term consequences, because Gurdaspur provided the only land route connecting India to the Kashmir Valley, playing a significant role in India's access to Kashmir during the 1947 conflict and contributing to the dispute over that territory that continues to this day. Radcliffe submitted his recommendations on August 9th. Mountbatten sat on them for 6 days, releasing them on August 17th, 2 days after independence had been declared. The decision to withhold the boundary until after independence was made to avoid disrupting the independence celebrations. It meant that millions of people celebrated independence without knowing which country they were now citizens of, or which side of the border they were on. When the Radcliffe Line was announced on August 17th, it triggered an explosion of communal violence on a scale that shocked even those who had anticipated trouble. In Punjab, the violence was most extreme. Entire train carriages of refugees were massacred, arriving at their destinations filled with corpses. Villages were burned. Women were killed by their own families to prevent them from being captured. The violence was committed by all sides. Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs all participated in atrocities against each other. The scale of the displacement was unprecedented. Within weeks, approximately 7 million Muslims had moved from India to Pakistan, and approximately 7 million Hindus and Sikhs had moved from Pakistan to India. Refugee camps became cities. The cities of Lahore and Amritsar, which had been neighbors for centuries, were now in different countries, and the populations crossing between them were moving in rivers of desperate humanity. Estimates of the death toll range from 200,000 to 1 million, the uncertainty itself reflecting the chaos of what happened. Entire communities disappeared. The violence left wounds in Indian, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi society that have never fully healed. Radcliffe left India before the worst of the violence began. He never publicly acknowledged what his line had caused. When asked in later years about his work on the Boundary Commission, he said only that he had done his best in impossible circumstances. The Radcliffe Line created not just two countries, but a series of conflicts that have defined South Asian politics for 7 decades. Kashmir, whose accession to India was made possible by the Gurdaspur corridor, remains divided between India and Pakistan. The two countries have fought 3 wars over it. Both possess nuclear weapons. The dispute shows no sign of resolution. East Pakistan, the eastern portion of Pakistan created by partition, became Bangladesh in 1971, after a war of independence that involved the killing of hundreds of thousands of people, in what many historians describe as a genocide. The communal tensions unleashed by partition, and by the manner in which partition was conducted, have shaped the politics of India and Pakistan ever since. Partition created founding traumas for both nations that informed their relationship with each other, with their own minority populations, and with the question of religious identity in public life. Cyril Radcliffe was knighted for his work. He accepted the honor, but he refused the fee he was offered. Perhaps the closest he ever came to acknowledging what his 5 weeks in India had produced. He destroyed his papers. He almost never spoke publicly about his work in India. He died in 1977, 30 years after the partition, without ever publicly reckoning with what the line he had drawn had meant for the 14 million people who crossed it and the million who did not survive the crossing. The Radcliffe Line was drawn in 5 weeks by a man who had never been to India, working from maps and census data in a sweltering office in New Delhi, with no ability to visit the places he was dividing and no time to understand what his decisions would mean for the people who lived in them. It is still there. The consequences are still unfolding, and Cyril Radcliffe did everything he could to leave it behind.